My name is Don Moss. I met my wife in 1994. I had 4 kids with her. Was married to her for 15 years. On the 15th year, my wife decided she was going to do divorce. She filed on October 22nd, 2012. Shortly before that, we had just gotten off a Disney cruise, living a very wonderful life. And after October 22nd, I was in the house for 9 months while my wife and children played games with me, pretending there was cameras in the house, playing little screwy games with me. On March 7th, 2013, she filed a domestic on me for hair trimming. That was a charge that was used to have me removed from my house. Afterwards, divorce paperwork was filed in June. I don't know how to go.
No, who was the author? Tell us about...
Okay, on March 7th, 2013, my wife filed for a domestic charge. During that day, I ended up getting a phone call from the Geauga Sheriff's Department to contact Deputy Robin Taylor. That went to a voicemail. When I called back 5 minutes later, the dispatcher from Geauga County decided she didn't know a Robin Taylor. And without a transfer to any phone within about 15 seconds, someone came on the phone saying that they were Robin Taylor. I later found out that this person is actually Robin Morris, using an alias name against me.
What happened when Robin Morris answered the phone when you called back?
I was told to come in and make a statement as to what happened the night before. When I went to the Sheriff's Department to make the statement, I was read my rights, and a statement was never taken, and I was thrown in jail for the night, where I was bonded out by a sit-in judge by the name of William Koblick the following morning from the municipal court, who I never saw, who later I found out looks exactly like Judge Forrest Burt, who's actually the man who divorced me on June 17, 2013.
Had you ever been arrested to that point ever in your life before this charge of domestic?
I've never been arrested, never had any crimes ever put on me, never had to stand in court, was relying solely on my attorney, who just led me through something that was totally wrong.
What was his name?
His name was John Salem. He led me through a domestic that appears to have pictures in it of a woman that doesn't appear to be my wife. And
These pictures are the ones with the haircut?
It was pictures of the haircut, and the charge was originally put on a social security number that wasn't even mine, which was later then changed.
So charge was not your wife either?
No, it wasn't. My attorney, John Salem, handed me the discovery paperwork when I was in the court before I came in and stood in front of Terry Stopeka.
Who is Terry Stopeka?
The municipal judge. John Salem told me that I was to plead no contest and there'd be no probation, and he showed me paperwork showing that it wasn't going to fall on my social.
Well, the reason you didn't fight it was because you didn't have the money to pay the attorney, and also you thought it was a game. Is it what you were telling? Explained previously. You thought this was a divorce game, or
Well, once he showed me the discovery and it had pictures that weren't my wife and socials that weren't mine, it appeared to be something that was wrong, and I told him that it should be thrown out of the court, and he told me that the prosecutor wouldn't allow it, and I had to plead no contest, and I saw that the charge wasn't going to fall on me, and there was no probation, so I pled no contest, not realizing that they were going to change the Social Security and tie it to my driver's license and put a charge on me that was fraudulent. And it's been used to keep me away from my home.
What was that fraudulent charge?
Domestic violence.
All right, so real quickly.
And that charge is still on my driver's license and on me, even though the charge got pled down in the municipal court to a lesser charge.
Which was criminal mischief?
Criminal mischief. At this point, I had 6 rental properties and a marital house that my children were being brought up in. I had a 401, a couple of inheritance accounts. My wife had her 403, 401, and a Cleveland Clinic pension. My rental incomes, 6 properties were bringing me in somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 a year profit.
Okay. And you were maintaining those, you were renting those, you were, because of your background as a guy who was a handyman or understood how to fix houses.
Yes, that was my
So
rental
you maintained
business.
them, and then you became also basically a stay-at-home dad because you had 4 or 5 children at the house at the time, or?
Yes, I had 4 children that I was raising, and I'm running a rental business at the same time.
What were the ages of your children at that time? And would tell me if they're male or females, and you can name them if they like, if it helps us.
I had a 7-year-old son, a 10-year-old son, 13-year-old daughter, and a 14-year-old daughter.
Okay, and the date of when was the date you left the house and were actually removed from the house because of domestic violence by the deputy Robin Taylor, A.K. Morris? What was that date?
I was removed on the domestic I have not been back to the house since March 7th, 2013.
Moving forward, the divorce is settled somehow without you seeing the agreement that your attorney made that you did not agree to for this settlement, and is incorrectly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what you've told me, the paperwork was incorrect. You never signed it, and before you know it, you're divorced, and you're paying child support for more based upon income that you didn't make. And also, as part of this divorce settlement, you are able to see your children.
No, every time I go out to the house, and I've been there 3 times, the sheriff's department goes out and
Which
tells...
sheriff is that?
The Geauga Sheriff's Department.
Same sheriff's department that Robin Taylor works for?
Correct. And I'm being told that I have no rights to my children and I have to leave.
Okay.
Whether I email my wife or not.
Yeah, the divorce decree says you're entitled to see your children. And we know the state of Ohio provides for that too.
It says shared custody, but there's no set
But
schedule.
you did make the effort. So,
But I have always seen everything that's happening to me as some type of game. I was shown paperwork for a domestic with pictures that aren't my wife, socials that are wrong. Then I got led into settlement papers that have no truth to them at all.
such as, give me a specific if you could.
The child support is based on a $40,000 a year job that I never had. My wife's Cleveland Clinic pension was never a part of the court proceedings. The very first house that I had before marriage didn't include the money that I put down before, as a down payment on that home, which I had given my lawyer, John Salem, ahead of time. As far as my wife's Cleveland Clinic pension, I'm the only one that's ever subpoenaed for it. No one's ever even looked for it. The paperwork is set up so that I have to sell all my rental properties when I can buy them. I should have been able to buy them and buy her out and not. I'd have walked away with 5 of the homes.
So let's clarify this. When you were going through your divorce proceedings, you offered to purchase the rental homes that you had, which were 6 rental properties, and asked what your half of that would be.
In every court proceeding, I asked to buy my rental properties. There are no appraisals that have ever been done on any other properties. And when I asked, to purchase them, the subject gets changed in the courtroom, or they say they're not going to make any decisions. And
Whose courtroom did this start in? Judge Burt? Your divorce?
It's started with magistrates. Dorothy Lee.
Who was the judge in your divorce, though?
It's Judge Forrest Burt.
Okay, now continue beyond
that. Anyway, on June 17, 2013, when I got divorced, settlement papers were put in front of me that were just filled with clerical errors. In fact, my divorce docket was opened up with 5 different birth dates for me, one of which I was born in 1696. I mean, there's none of the birth dates are correct.
This is Geauga Court?
This is Geauga Court, and
Geauga Municipal Court? Geauga
Common Pleas.
Okay.
When John Salem brought me my settlement papers, he didn't let me read any of them. He told me to sign, manipulated me through it. When I got to the last page, which was child support, I didn't sign it because it was wrong. It was the wrong dollar amount that me and him even talked about. I realized he was manipulating me through something that was wrong. We went into the courtroom where I ended up sitting in front of William Koblich, who looks just like Judge Forrest Burt, sitting in Burt's chair saying he was Burt. And I played along thinking that it was all going to end, because it looked like a joke to me. I was getting jerked around in something that was wrong. I had a fake domestic on me. Now I've got paperwork that's all fraudulent and made up. And I'm looking at the wrong judge. I saw it as a game. And when it was all done and over with, I looked around and I became trapped in it. And it's like my word against everyone else's. And I've been stuck with settlement papers that have been slowly destroying my rental business, my retirement. The funny thing is, my wife's retirement, her career, none of it is being touched. She has the career job, she's got the retirement.
And what do you got?
I have 2 remaining homes as a receiver. An attorney has been taking my properties over, throwing people out, evicting them.
Tell us who he is and how he got there.
The receiver's name is Pierce Leary. No matter what I say to the court, he's been allowed to cause 2 foreclosures, throw tenants out, damage my properties, not pay my bills. I've mentioned it to Burt in the courtroom, and he just smiles at me and is allowing him to just destroy everything I've ever worked for. The weird thing is, my wife's attorney's not trying to stop it either. Her name's Denise Cook. My wife is not getting any of the money. She's losing just as much as I am. Well, after not seeing my kids for 2.5 years, emailing my wife wasn't going to work. So I started texting, still seeing it as some kind of game. I got threatened by Deputy Robin Morris, who was saying she's Robin Taylor. And I didn't feel that she was going to be able to do anything about me texting versus emailing, because how much different is that?
Isn't that how you communicated anyways, by sending
it's easy.
emails?
It's easier to text than it is to email.
And plus you do email via text. So you've used electronic communication.
I saw no harm in it, and I ended up getting warned, didn't believe it, because I'm texting, I want to see my children, nothing threatening.
Which was part of the divorce decree and part of the state of Ohio.
And all it did was cause a harassment case to be opened up by this Robin Morris.
And who did she go to get this case opened up? What judge?
Oh, the harassment case was held in the Sheridan Municipal Court with Terry Stopeka once again. Terry Stopeka overheard a higher court order and sentenced me on December 9th to 6 months in jail. Actually, she sentenced me as guilty, but she wasn't going to sentence me until February 2nd.
Let's go back for a second. Robin Taylor tells Terry Stopeka, Judge Stopeka, and 7/9/214 of 2014, you are issued a warrant because you wanted to see your children. You're picked up by the Mentor Police and transported to Robin Taylor.
Correct.
She arrests you and transports you to Geauga Jail.
Yes.
At that point. Mrs. Black from Ravenwood interviews you. Is this true?
Yes, every time I'm in the Geauga Sheriff's Department, I'm subject to sitting in front of Ravenwood employees to evaluate me.
And what were their conclusions at that point with Mrs. Black from Ravenwood?
She pink slipped me after I was bonded out. And the Sheriff's Department rehooked me up and took me over to University Hospitals to get evaluated over there.
Same area, they're all together, aren't they, over there in Geauga?
University Hospital is right behind the Geauga County Sheriff's Department.
Which is University Hospital as well, all together there?
Yes. When I got to North Coast on July 10th, 2014, the doctor was Dr. INSU, and he informed me that I wasn't there just for texting. I was there for some viable threat. And at that point, he had told me the viable threat was that my phone called my wife's phone and left a voicemail that I was going to rape her. At that point, I told the doctor that it didn't exist. He kept me there for 14 days. On the 13th day...
Did you ever leave a voicemail of that nature?
No, I had told him that I had not ever, that it didn't exist. I didn't leave any voicemail and they won't find it.
You didn't do it?
Correct. On the 13th day, I signed a release form to my wife and to the Sheriff's Department to go find the viable threat. The doctor then called my wife and the Sheriff's Department because he was taking me to court on the 14th day. While we went into court, he then told the magistrate or the judge that was in charge, which was Karen Wade, he told her that the viable threat didn't exist and nobody knew where it came from. I later found out that the viable threat came from Brian Aries from Ravenwood.
Who made it up?
Correct.
Okay. So Aries, by making it up, gets you into the state mental facility. There is no viable threat. They get to the bottom of this viable threat that never occurred. But here, getting back to my question, did you take any medication while you were in the North Coast State Mental Facility? Or were you required to? Or were you told to?
Everyone, all the nurses, the staff said you have to take medication in order to be in there or to get out. The only way out is through the court to dismiss you or the doctor to let you out. And if you're there because of the doctor or you're probated, you have to take medication no matter what.
You have to comply with what his request
You have to
was?
comply in order to get out.
And did you comply?
I ended up taking Risperdal.
And what did you find out about Risperdal? Did you notice any change in your behavior? Did people comment Or no? Did you feel any difference? Did you breathe differently? Did you think differently?
I
Not really. It's okay if you
It-
didn't.
it mostly just gave me a headache. I wasn't even taking it a week.
Okay. So, after taking your medication, you then gained legal representation, and through Attorney Nate Malik and Dr. Jane Lee Conrad, were attended a hearing on July 24th, where they described, Dr. Conrad described that you were not a person who was a threat to society. You might be somewhat, possibly, I think they use the term delusional a little bit about what was going on with your wife and divorce. And Attorney Malik went before a magistrate there, and they did release you.
Yes, I was dismissed as not mentally ill.
It's not your
Deputy
fault.
Robin Morris is the one doing that to me. She's caused a domestic. She's used an alias name to do it. She's falsified evidence in that case.
She's obstructed justice.
And she's in my harassment. Swearing in was an alias name.
Yeah.
August 15th, 2014, I went to the divorce hearing.
But it was
That-
already
that-
final at that point, right? This is for
It was
assets.
finalized, but that's when Pierce Leary first came into.
First time you saw him,
That's
met
the
him.
first time I saw him coming into any court hearing. They put me on the stand where they asked me all the tenants' names. They asked me what the rents were. They basically were setting me up to have him take my rental properties from me. The judge told me he wasn't making any decisions that day
With regard to appointing a receiver.
with any of it. Any of the motions that were talked that day.
What were those motions, you remember?
Um,
If you don't, it's okay.
One was a motion for me to correct child support.
Which is incorrect anyway, right? Based upon income that wasn't true.
It's incorrect. And I was also questioned about my settlement papers. According to my settlement papers, I'm supposed to give $44,000 or somewhere around there to my wife.
Coming from where?
Coming out of my 401k.
What about your wife's 401k?
When Judge Burt asked me why I didn't do it, I told him that she had a Cleveland Clinic pension, and I was the only one that at that point had ever subpoenaed for it. And to this day, I've never given her the $44,000, and it has never been brought up. And it's because she does have a Cleveland Clinic pension, and she'd owed me $10,000 or $20,000. There was seven properties that were involved in this divorce, and I'm entitled to none of them to live in. I have to live with my mother through this whole thing.
To this moment in time, actually.
Correct. And it appears I'm losing everything.
What
And my daughter, at one point when I was in the house, about 3 months into my wife
After
filing,
Okay.
told me that I would lose everything. And it appears that is exactly what is happening.
Okay. There was an instance after you were released from the North Coast Health Facility, after you had the hearing with Judge Burt about your properties, who made no decision at that time about Pierce Leary, after and during your pre-trials and meeting with the prosecutor from Geauga County, James Gillette, that there was a time when you were leaving an establishment in Mentor on your motorcycle with a friend of yours, and you were pulled over on Tyler Boulevard, which is in Mentor, and charged with an OVI and a speeding ticket. Can you tell me about that?
Well, that actually happened on October 28th, 2014, but it started October 1st. From October 1st to October 28th, the Mentor Police Department was GPSing my phone, even though I can't prove it.
How would they have done it? Had they had your phone previously?
Every place that I set my phone, at my rentals, at my mother's house, at times I was carrying my mother's phone and leaving my phone at the house, and my mother would text me not to come home because the police were sitting outside.
Why do you feel they'd be doing that?
They were trying to catch me on an OVI. They would only be looking for me at night in the evening. On October 28th was one of the last warm days, and I got on my motorcycle like in the afternoon and forgot that I had my phone. Later that evening, I had a bad feeling that, they were tracking me again. And when I was with a friend of mine and we were both on motorcycles going down Tyler Boulevard, and I was looking both ways and going the speed limit, watching very carefully, both of us got pulled over and I was given an OVI. My friend was let go. The reason for me getting pulled over is a speeding ticket that was made out 5 minutes before they bonded me out. On that speeding ticket, it's whited out where it says 50 and a 35. The discovery on that in that case had no radar involved in it at all.
And what happened to your friend? I assume, were you driving at the same speed?
We were side by side.
And he was let go and not given a speeding ticket.
Yep.
And you were arrested on the spot, given a sobriety test, and then arrested for speeding and OVI?
Yeah, I was
given. He had nothing.
I was given a speeding ticket and the OVI, and they cut my friend loose. But we weren't going 50. I mean, I was watching the speed going all the way down Tyler and it was 4 cruisers that pulled me over. 2 bikes, 4 cruisers on a Tuesday night at 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So at that point you were charged with OVI, taken to the jail, right?
Yes.
And you were then bonded out, correct?
I bonded out of there within like a half hour.
Okay. So that case is pending at that point in time, and you are then set for trial and go to trial. You think, believing it's a trial with jury on 12/9 of 2014 with Judge Topeka. As the tapes will show, the video will show, which you have a copy of, you right there before the trial begins, you ask Judge Topeka for for a jury trial. Now, prior to this, as you just mentioned, you were in North Coast Mental Facility, had been put there by health experts in Geauga County, and were declared to have some mental illness. These records were known, and these illnesses were based upon some things you had submitted to court, some motions back during your divorce case, I believe. Can you tell us some of those motions? Was it motions that you submitted because you didn't feel that they were paying attention to your case? I think it was leapfrog, pet the dog, tale of 2 monkeys, or something like this. You submitted. So the judges seem to be aware of you in Geauga County, and whether you think it was a divorce game, you were put in a situation. They knew that you weren't you were representing yourself, right? And it put you in a mental facility because they didn't think you were operating at full tilt. And then she's allowing you to represent yourself in this hearing for harassment, okay? And basically tells you that she, first of all, allows you to represent yourself, and then tells you, as you requested on tape, I want a jury trial, and she replies that, well, if you're representing yourself, you should have known you had to do that in writing, and we're going to move forward. Is this true?
That's correct.
Give us your take on this hearing.
I got manipulated through something that was purposely used to break my bond and give me 6 months in jail. The video proves that. Terry Topeka, during the sentencing, asked me why I thought she dropped the warrant on me, and I told her I didn't know why. And she said it was because I didn't come in on the 17th to fill out financial paperwork. I'm not sure why I had to come in on the 17th to do that when she found me guilty on December 9th. But I told her in the sentencing that she dropped a warrant on me on the 16th, 2 minutes before noon. She told me that it didn't matter, threw her gavel down, and gave me 6 months in jail. I believe the charge was actually being done so that a receiver, Pierce Leary, could take over my rental properties, which he did do January 16th, 2015, as I was in jail defenseless. He took my properties over, threatened all my tenants. Some of them moved out. He didn't turn the utilities on. Property damage was caused. He threatened the tenants, evicted, a couple of them. He took my Menor Headlands house and made the woman move out within a couple of months so that he could sell the house. The house was only on the market for 2 days and was sold to an investment person, and it was immediately put back on the market for $30,000 more than what it was sold for. And Pierce has been slowly letting my houses sit while he feeds off of his wages off of my rental properties, leaves them empty. It's causing me to lose every one of them because of what he's doing. As of right now, out of the 6 rental properties, there's still one, which is in North Willoughby on Bellevue, that has never had a for sale sign and has never been listed. And he's been in charge of my rentals since January 16th, 2015. I'm not sure how, not listing properties is what a receiver should be doing, but he's sold my Menor double. It was never had a for sale sign and was never on a listing anywhere. He just sold it to the neighbor. In fact, he even gave the keys to the neighbor prior to the sale so that he could go through my property. I had a fully loaded garage with all my personal items while I was in jail. The neighbor was going through, taking whatever he wanted. Putting cameras on a house that, he didn't own. And I believe that him and the realtor probably got a bribe from the neighbor to have it sold to them. I went to court on March 22nd, 2016 for a hearing for them to sell this property, which is on Jackson Street in Menor. And I told them that the McDonald's guy offered me $150,000. Why would you sell this house to the neighbor for $115,000? And that's when they threw me in jail and sold the property to the neighbor anyway. And they made my 72-year-old mother empty my garage out with all my rental supplies, my tools. They made her do it all by herself. And it's currently been all dumped in my mother's garage because of what they did. February 2nd is when she wasn't going to sentence me until February 2nd, according to the docket.
Okay.
But she broke my bond on the 16th. Or
I'm gonna
she
get
put a
to
warrant on the 16th. And
Okay, of December. So hang on. So after you're found guilty on December 9th, you are then, well, first of all, you feel you shouldn't even be in this court for the harassment. You should not be in muni court. You should be in common pleas.
correct.
Attorney said she doesn't know how that she got jurisdiction even to hear the harassment.
I didn't understand the purpose of the harassment case, or what they were doing, or what the reason was behind it. Terry Stopeka found me guilty on December 9th, 2014, but wasn't going to sentence me until February 2nd. She gave me all that time trying to find a reason to break my bond. And she specifically wanted me to come in on the 17th to fill out financial paperwork so that she could purposely break my bond. That's why she dropped a warrant out on me on the 16th. And even though I told her in court that she did it the day before, she didn't want to hear it. She broke my bond and gave me 6 months. On December 29th, the jail brought me over there for her to sentence me.
Okay, so to understand this clear to all people listening is you were found guilty on 12/9, December 9th, even though you asked for a jury trial, never received it. They allowed you to represent yourself knowing that you were mentally incompetent, at least in their opinion, by their professionals. They asked you to come in to fill out financial paperwork on December 17th. Okay? But on the 16th, they say that they issue a warrant for no reason, basically, because you hadn't done anything on the 16th, or you did not show on the 17th because it's the 16th that she's making out this warrant for your arrest because you never showed up on the 17th. Correct? So you find out you have a warrant for your arrest because you didn't show up on the 17th, yet the warrant was issued on the 16th.
My brother-in-law contacted me on the 16th of December, letting me know that there was a warrant out on me. So,
and what was that warrant for? Not showing up on the 17th?
According to Terry Stopeka, yes.
Yet she issued on the 16th a warrant for your warrant on the 16th for not showing up on the 17th when in fact it was the 16th. So it doesn't make much sense, does it?
No. Well, I didn't show up on the 17th because I was trying to get my affairs in order, and then I turned myself in on the 23rd. Once again, thinking...
Were you required to come on the 17th? Was there any threat that you were breaking any bonds if you wouldn't have come on the 17th prior to the 16th of that bond being issued to you? Did anyone say if you didn't come on the 17th?
She evidently wanted me to talk to Vicky about my financial situation.
But she tell you if you don't show up on the 17th, we were going to put a warrant on the rest?
No, she did not say that I'd be breaking my bond over that.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. So then you are... you turn yourself in on the December 23rd, and you're held over, correct, at that point? And until the 29th, Merry Christmas, Don, you're in jail, and then given 6 months for breaking your bond, for not showing up for a warrant that you had no reason would be issued on the 16th, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You're then in the 6 months that you are sentenced to is in the Geauga County Jail. At this time, Judge Topeka asked Ravenwood to monitor you, I guess, and this is something that you talked about, falsified statements by Dr. Rodeo from Ravenwood at that point?
She put in the court docket that Ravenwood needed to report back on my behavior to the courts. And they gave me a copy of the paperwork. Once I was in the jail, I was looking at it, and there was a spot on it to revoke that.
Revoke what?
Revoke Ravenwood talking back to the courts. So on January 6, 2015, I met with Dr. Rodeo from Ravenwood, and I immediately had him sign to have it revoked because I saw no purpose in anything being reported back to the courts.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that Judge Topeka wants you to see a mental facility doctor, yet just held court with you, allowed you to represent yourself on 12/9, and then according to attorneys, since you were charged again for breaking your bond, attorneys say that you were entitled to representation at that point, which you didn't have for the bond issue itself, for being in contempt. Is that what?
She never asked me if I wanted legal representation.
Yes, you just... So there's another problem there with you not having representation or given representation to defend yourself for this bond issue. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we then go to, after you just explained you have the inability to report back to the courts, While you're in Geauga County Jail, you plead guilty on 1/14 of 2015 to the OVI because Judge Trebitz in Mentor allows you to serve this guilty plea for the time period that he would sentence you concurrently in Geauga Jail.
Yeah, Geauga County brought me over there to the Mentor courts, where I ended up talking to Lisa Clammer, the prosecutor, and she basically said, since I'm pleading guilty, that she didn't even want to be in the courtroom and just, go and plead guilty to the judge. And it's because the evidence that was in the court case wasn't proper to begin with, and I should have been fighting it, but I couldn't do it because I was already in jail. And when you're in jail, it's hard to fight a case.
Right. It's safe to say at this point, if we could fade back for one moment, that when your ex-wife made the charge that you trimmed her hair, and Robin Taylor, domestic violence woman in Geauga County, brought you in, had you come in, this divorce, this arrest that you'd never previously, you had properties, you had a normal life, this now has led you, that hair trimming charge, accusation, allegedly, to a woman you don't even recognize in the photos, has now led to several arrests, going to jail, taking your freedom, taking your rights. So now you're pleading guilty to an OVI, harassment, all leading back to charges caused by a divorce case from some domestic violence individual that has even no evidence.
I believe all of it is tied to Deputy Robin Morris, and I think she's being allowed to do it from the Sheriff's Department.
Do you think
because she's using an alias name against me. The Geauga County Sheriff's Department does
swearing
not
in on
have
it?
a Deputy Robin Taylor working for them.
Say that again?
Geauga County does not have a Deputy Robin Taylor working for
Who
them.
do they have working for them?
Deputy Robin Morris.
Does she swear into that name?
She-
What does she swear? You said you've been in court. What does she swear in as?
She's on the Geauga County website being awarded as Deputy Robin Morris. No officer can be two different,
But when she goes to court, what does she swear under? You've seen her in court.
in every one of my cases, she says she's Robin Taylor.
She swears in
Mm-hmm.
as Deputy Robin Taylor.
All my court documents and everything say Robin Taylor on them.
Okay. So, did she happen to be at this sentencing? No? Do you remember in Mentor? Was
No,
she present?
she wasn't a part of anything that happened with the Mentor OVI. But this same woman removed me from my house. Deputy Robin Morris pretended to be Robin Taylor, removed me from my house for the domestic. She's caused the domestic, she's caused a harassment, and she's caused an OVI now in Ashtabula that we haven't got to yet. Plus, I have an alias name being used in a protection order against me.
Okay. So we basically now you've pled guilty, and while you're still in jail, incarcerated in Geauga County Jail, you plead guilty to the OVI. You're going to serve that concurrently in the Geauga County Jail.
Were you advised to plead guilty to that?
I had no lawyer at that time. I was incarcerated on the harassment case in jail. Another court date was then booked for January 21st. I couldn't defend myself in jail. Mm-hmm. So I felt that the charge wasn't going to fall on my driver's license because
The second OVI, you mean?
no, the one from Mentor. I did not believe the charge was going to fall on my social. I at that point I still felt I was in a game. I had a domestic that did not fall on my social.
When you say game, because you believe that the divorce wasn't valid, correct? The divorce game itself, and you thought the system itself in Geauga was going to force you to lose everything according to what your daughter had said about you losing everything. It was kind of prophetic. And you thought this was part of that game still, or no?
I've always seen it as a game. I mean, I had a domestic for hair trimming. I mean, and it had pictures in it. My attorney showed me pictures that were not my wife in that court case. I could only call it a game other than that. Mm-hmm. Then I go into the divorce proceedings on June 17th, and I'm looking at William Koblich sitting there saying he's Bert. And my settlement papers, I got 2 months after. I got them on August 8th. I never even saw them. I never got a copy when I left the divorce proceedings. And when I got them, I'm looking at them, and they're so fraudulent and so made up, and they don't have the correct information. 3 of my rental houses had the wrong addresses. I'm looking at something that appeared to be some kind of game that basically trapped me. So after I got the settlement papers, I started going to the house to see my kids to find out that the officers are going to keep me away from my kids, holding me to that paperwork.
So actually, that's a good point you bring up. When you went to try to visit your kids, the Geauga County Police, or who showed up? The Auburn? Who was the...
I went out there 3 different times, and the sheriff's department sent me away each time saying that...
Why did they show up? Because your ex-wife had called them? How did they know you were there?
I knock on the door, and my wife doesn't answer, my kids don't come out, and the sheriff's department then shows up with 2 or 3 cars telling me that I have to leave, and
why did you have to leave?
Because I no longer lived there because I got removed from...
But did you tell them you had visitation rights?
They told me that I had to take it up with the courts. They're telling me that my wife said she didn't want me there.
That's interesting. The point that you make is interesting because we have evidence of people who, similar to you, have been in divorces. When they have a court, they have a divorce settlement that says they have shared parenting or they have the ability to see their children, and they want to see their children, even if the kids don't want to see them, the police have made sure that the children actually leave the house and go with that parent. It's not the children's choice at that point to see it. So it's kind of conflicting here that you have every right to see your children according to the state law. And in this case, you're not allowed, yet other people that we know of that actually show up, and the police make the children come out and force that parent, saying that this parent who wants to visit, similar position to you, have the right to see their parent, have forced those parents to relinquish, to make those kids come out and see the parent. We know this for a fact. So it doesn't make sense, does it? So moving forward, during the period of time you were incarcerated in Geauga Jail, 1/16 of 15, you learn that Pierce Leary has now been appointed as a receiver, to your divorce case, even though the divorce is final, and he starts evicting, sending letters of eviction to the tenants of all your 6 rental properties. Okay? You also, is this true so far? Is that what happens? He sends out letters?
He sends out threatening letters that he's in charge. One person in Euclid on Lakeshore moved out immediately.
What street is that, just so we can keep reference to that?
Lakeshore.
Oh, is that Euclid?
But he was not concerned about even turning the water off. From jail, I had to get one of my friends to go over to the house and make sure that the water was turned off in the basement. And the pipes all broke in that house because Pierce didn't check on any of the properties after putting those letters out, didn't make sure any of the utilities were still on, and basically decided that my 2 Euclid homes weren't worth saving.
You were saying because they weren't the worth market price that he was seeking to sell them for?
They weren't worth saving because the one on Lakeshore, he told my mother there was $10,000 worth of damage done to it that basically he caused.
That occurred after he had told the tenant to leave?
Correct. And neither one of the houses were worth what was owed on them. There was too much debt owed on them. And he didn't want to deal with them.
Were they Section 8, by the way? Is this what you were...
He told my wife the other one that's over on Gary Ave was a Section 8 tenant. He told my mother that he didn't know anything about Section 8 and he wasn't going to deal with it. That particular house was the only house he had never changed any locks on. He never bothered that tenant. She lived there for 2 years without paying any rent. I couldn't evict her because he got in my way. He wasn't going to evict her. The water bill presently on that house is $3,200 because he just let her live there.
Has he paid it?
He has not paid that water bill, and he has not paid the one on Lakeshore that's $800. And both those homes, well, the Lakeshore house has been sold. The Gary house is being winterized by the bank.
Yeah. Okay, so he took charge of these properties. We don't know what his qualifications were. You don't know how he became a receiver because you were incarcerated during this period of time. You also mentioned when he took over these properties, he sent letters of evictions, and he then had someone named Dan O'Reilly of Remax and Chardon that he had working with him to list these properties, these 6 properties, because the idea was to sell them, I guess. So then the monies that he sold would be split between you and your wife according to the divorce decree?
Correct.
Okay, so let's go down them real quickly. You have a house on Jackson Street, one of the 6 properties. The Jackson Street property, which was your first property you bought before you were married, and then moved into with your wife. You turned it into a double, and at the time when he took over the property, there was 2 renters in there, paying approximately, maybe aggregately together, almost $1,400 a month or more. And he, at that point, told them they would have to leave those houses.
Correct.
Okay. Which is Jackson Street. Let's stick with Jackson Street right now. Correct. So he basically
He evicted both tenants.
okay. And they both left or no?
They had no choice but to leave.
Okay. At that point also, when he evicted them, slightly before this time period in 2014, you were offered $150,000 for this property by the next door neighbor, which was McDonald's, and the owner, Ali Mondovi, even though you thought at that point you didn't want to sell it for that because you thought the property was worth more. But at that point, you at least had an offer of $150,000, which you decided not to take in 2014. You feel that value of that house was maybe closer to $180,000? Comparables in that area? You said it was unique because no one has a double in that area?
I believe it was worth $180,000. The McDonald's owner offered to buy the land or the home. But before the receiver, Pierce Leary, was even in charge, I wasn't looking to sell any of my properties. I was looking to buy them. So
I mean, buy them meaning take your house.
I was never selling any of my properties.
Did you have any debt on that Jackson property?
There was $73,000 worth of debt.
Okay. All right. So at this point, you have no renters. They're out. You learn that this property was recently sold to the next door neighbor for $115,000.
Yes.
And that neighbor's name again was
Brian Epp.
EPP.
That's
was
correct.
the neighbor who bought it for $115,000, well below the value of comparables in the neighborhood. At the time when I believe you were incarcerated, Pierce Leary also allowed him to go into your garage there and actually take some things that were your personal property, which I guess you had some things, tools.
You talked about that.
Oh, you're talking about? Okay. So moving forward, then, it could be breaking and entering. Pierce Leary actually engaged in allowing people to go in and out of your properties. The second property that we're going to refer to is 4739 Willowbrook, which is Mentra Headlands, and in your opinion was the most, of all your properties, the most profitable, the best, number one in your heart for several reasons. You thought you had paid $32,000, had no debt on the property at the time. Pierce sold this property in May of 2015 for $64,900. It was never listed. And then the property, after the new owner bought it, was relisted. He listed the property for $98,000, which it's currently listed for. The previous tenant was paying $750,000 a month before Pierce evicted her in 1/16 of 15 when he sent out the eviction notices. Is this pretty much correct on this property? Anything else to add or subtract?
No, it sounds about right.
This is what you told me. Okay. The third property that we talk about is in Willoughby, Ohio. That Willowbrook was in Mentor Headlands. This is 941?
941.
941 Hayes, Willoughby. You purchased in 2009 for $39,500. Pierce notified the renter, which was very aggravated at learning he was evicted, destroyed some of the property, which you actually, when you got out of incarceration, were able to, at the time, title into your mother's name, and at that point, fixed up the damage that was done to it through Pierce's eviction notice, re-rented the property to a Cindy, who was then, after the property, your mother was threatened, after you had given the property to your mother, title the property to your mother, correct?
Correct.
And then your mother was threatened by Pierce Leary and Judge Burt to put that title back into Pierce Leary's name, give him control, or else your mother was going to go to jail for contempt of court. And so your mother, even having an attorney, was afraid and signed back this property to Pierce Leary. Pierce Leary takes it over, evicts the tenant that you had put in there during this brief period of time, which your mother held title, and she was recently evicted only a month or so ago now. She's left the property, and Pierce Leary has now done what with that property? Has he listed the property?
He's just recently listed it. Remax, the Remax man has just listed it.
Okay. For how much?
It's listed for $54,900, but Pierce offered it to me for $60,000.
Okay. How nice of him. But yet he offered it to you for $60,000, but gave it to them for that. And when he said offered it to you, did you felt that he didn't have an appraisal? Why didn't you buy it for that?
The house isn't worth $60,000. There are no appraisals that have been done on any of my properties.
Do you think it's worth 54?
Um,
Do you think someone will buy it for 54? Or what do you think the market value is on that property?
it's worth what anybody is willing to
Give me a
purchase it
guesstimate.
for.
Do you think it's worth 50,000? Do you think it's worth 45,000? In your opinion?
I don't believe the house is going to sell for anything but probably 30.
Okay.
There's so many houses in that neighborhood.
Okay. Let's move on to the next property, 931 Bellevue, also in Willoughby. Purchased in 2010 for $36,000. It is debt-free. Pierce was appointed, and as I just previously mentioned, he evicted the tenant in there in January of 2015. You had got your mother to take over the property temporarily by titling to her. Once again, your mother is threatened. Even though you get a new tenant in there after Pierce had thrown the previous one out or threatened him, you get a new tenant in there. The property is then, your mother is told she better give the title to you through Burt's Courts and Pierce Leary, or else she's going to jail. She gives the title back to Pierce Leary. And the tenant inside, Martha Owens, who is a 65-year-old elderly woman, moves in after you spend $2,000 to repairs from the previous tenant who was aggravated. They were thrown out by Pierce Leary. She moves in at 65 years old and pays $650 a month. Pierce regains control, threatens her to get out of the house. She becomes ill and is sickly, stressed out of the situation, and is currently hospitalized for the stress she's going through this situation. Is that pretty much accurate?
That's correct. She's either still in the hospital or she could be dead. No one's checking. That the house that she's in has never been listed.
To this minute, Remax or Pierce Leary or Dan O'Reilly or anybody's not listed.
No, Dan O'Reilly, Remax, Pierce, nobody is listing that home.
Okay. The two properties left we previously touched on, the one on Gary is in foreclosure and not sold yet, correct?
Correct.
How much do you think that's worth?
The Gary,
Yeah, it was Section 8, correct? Might be worth, you told me a number before. What do you think?
that house is probably worth 20,000,
Okay.
just because of it being in Euclid.
And you owe how much? 45,000.
That one is sitting at 63,000.
Okay.
Not to mention all the fees that have been added to it over the last couple of years.
And this
Because
is through Pierce took it over, and he milking machine kind of thing. He keeps
Well,
charging for.
the city has been charging me for grass cutting, taxes. All that stuff will happen before it goes into the sheriff's auction.
Is Pierce Leary supposed to be handling that? Pierce Leary didn't hire anybody.
He's made it clear that they weren't worth what was owed on it, and he was just going to let them go into bankruptcy.
But he has sold two of your properties, right, Mentor?
Yes.
So there should be some money somewhere. Has he ever given you an accounting of what he's done or sold for any of your properties? Have you ever received a formal accounting of anything? As he is a receiver, which is his fiduciary.
I have
right?
never seen any paperwork in the sale of any house.
Any monies?
He sent me papers for like
No,
his.
have you received any monies?
Oh no, but he sent me papers for his fees that he's taking out of this money.
Okay, so the last property is in Euclid, also on Lakeshore Boulevard. This was foreclosed upon and also then sold for $10,000. Same story where you bought it for $64,000. He threw out the people. And is this the tenant that didn't leave for a while, or is that the one that did leave? Just the pipes broke.
No,
and
that's the
Lakeshore?
Gary house.
Okay, so Lakeshore Boulevard, they stayed there for.
Lakeshore Boulevard. The lady moved out as soon as she got the letter from Pierce on January 16th,
And she was
2015.
paying how much a month? Remember?
She was paying $750 a month.
Okay. So again, you lost that revenue, yet had to pay all the maintenance and taxes and everything else you were responsible for with having no tenant in there. And Pierce Leary found no new tenant, nor did he sell the property. He allowed it to go into foreclosure.
Correct. And he didn't even ask the lender if they would do a short sale or anything like that.
Okay. I'm going to take you back a little bit. We're going to go through some notes here. You do have also a house that you live with, which was your marital house, with Melody in Auburn, city of Auburn Township. The value of that house, well, two things. One is Melody allowed it to go into foreclosure, correct?
Yes, she did let it go into foreclosure, even though she could afford to make the bills without any child support or anything from me.
And you were on that property, weren't you, as well, on that loan?
Yes.
And who was that with? The loan, was it Huntington
That
Bank?
was Huntington Bank.
Okay, so they foreclosed, you received notice, you received legal notice that you were included in this suit of foreclosure with your ex-wife or wife, Melody, and then all of a sudden, there was no more lawsuits, and you informed me that Melody had refinanced the house,
She
and
refinanced.
somehow you were not on it any longer.
How does someone let a house go into foreclosure as a nurse when they make enough money to support the mortgage and then refinance it without me? She makes more than enough money, so why did it go into foreclosure to begin with?
Well, and how did it come out of foreclosure without your name on it? Did you sign any papers? Did you?
No, but the loan went into foreclosure, and then she took it back out. And now the loan is only in her name. That house is only in her name.
How much is that house worth? And again, what do you think? You had some issues with doing.
There's a couple of additions that are not finished. If they were finished, the house would be worth like $260,000.
How many square feet is that house?
I can't say for sure. I can't say for sure.
You have a basement?
Yeah.
Finished basement?
Yes.
Okay. And her mortgage is $190 on that property. Okay, so you feel it could be, if it was done fixed up and completed these things you mentioned, it could be worth 240 to 260 if it was done.
Correct.
Okay. So, taking you back to June of 2015, you were released from prison, and you
Jail.
released from jail. Sorry. And this is the point where had your mother put the two houses in Willoughby into your mother's name and fixed these properties in June of 2015 and re-rented them. Your mother was then charged. You were charged with contempt of court on 10/2.
When I got out of the harassment case, I was in there from December 23rd to June 23rd. When I got out, the remaining houses, my Hayes house in Willoughby, my Bellevue house in Willoughby, and my Menor double on Jackson Street were all in my name. So I took those homes and put them into my mother's name.
Why'd you do that?
Because I didn't want to, I kept telling them I did not want to sell my rentals. I want to buy them. And they weren't listening to me.
And you had an income from those rentals.
I had an income. They were stealing from me. So I put the houses in my mother's name, notified them, and then went through, fixed all the damages that Pierce had caused from throwing people out.
You pissed people off.
It cost thousands of dollars for me to put new carpet in, paint, and fix all the damage. Then I re-rented them. After I re-rented them, they brought me back to court, and I looked at them and I told them that I was not stealing the homes. I wished to buy them. And once again, they threatened my mother with throwing her in jail if they didn't transfer the
Who
houses.
was they? Who threatened?
Judge Burt threatened my mother.
65-year-old woman.
No,
She's 70.
my mother was 72. Judge Burt threatened her with jail time if she didn't take and transfer the homes back into Pierce Leary's name, the receiver. And at that point, that was October 2nd, and they found me in contempt with interfering with Pierce Leary, and they threw me in jail. Instead of letting me just buy my rental properties.
They threw you in jail for what? Interfering?
Interfering with Pierce Leary. He shouldn't have been appointed into my docket. I had the money to buy my properties, and they continue to make me lose all my properties.
And the reason you had the money is because you had a 401k you mentioned, that you were willing to, you didn't have to get loans for these properties to negotiate to buy them. You were willing to pay them cash to own the properties that were rightfully half yours at the minimum.
Correct.
And you made that point clear to them?
Yes, I told them August 15th, 2014, that all I owe my wife is half of the properties.
The value.
Half of what they're worth. What are we going to do? There were no appraisals. They would not let me buy them at that point. When they threw me in jail, they automatically appointed Pierce Leary, and he's been consistently destroying the rental properties, causing me damage. And no matter how much I tell Judge Forrest Burt that that's what's happening and the man is causing waste and causing damage to me, Judge Burt just smiles and lets him do whatever as he throws me in jail. Burt has thrown me in jail October 2nd, 2015 for the first contempt charge. And then he threw me in jail March 22nd, 2016 for the second contempt charge. Consistently, I'm going to jail for homes that I can buy. And it makes
When you're in front of him, does he allow you to, how does he react to you? I've heard some rumors from your mother that he's actually rose up out of the bench and was hollering during these sessions. Is this true?
I see everybody as acting in the courtroom. I have watched my wife lie in the courtroom. I've watched her lawyer lie. And I've watched Judge Forrest Burt lie. I keep saying I'm in some kind of game, but it's not really a game since I'm the one being thrown in jail and in mental institutes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so back to your second contempt. All right. You feel that Pierce Leary at some point, due to you trying to fight for something that, meaning your properties that you've worked all lifetime and were hoping to retire at some point after your kids got old enough, not just that, but accumulate more homes. It sounds like you have, I won't say mastered, but it sounds like you have a good idea of how to pick up these homes. Briefly, you have a brother-in-law that got you into the business, into this buying home business, and has several properties. So it just wasn't that you were trying to retain 6 properties, is that you hoped to buy more and to build that portfolio, where you're trying to continue that portfolio?
I wanted more homes, and I'm being stopped from doing that because people are damaging what I've already built.
Right. Your hopes was to use the homes, or this system that you felt you had because you were able to fix homes, repair homes. By this time, it's been 15 to 18 years, you're getting pretty good at it, right? And if history showed itself, these homes were paying off themselves through rentals. So you had a long-term plan, really, for maybe having 10 to 15 homes. Who knows, right? The problem was you weren't able to move forward. You weren't even able to take over what
I have not been able to move forward in life for the last 4 years when it comes to being productive and making money and doing something with my life.
You've made no income over the
I have judges that are incarcerating me, forcing me to lose money, lose my business.
Mm-hmm.
It's all
pay child support that is over.
Basically, I'm being attacked to where I'm losing everything I've ever worked for.
Mm-hmm.
And
you want the game to stop, right?
Well, my wife is not getting any of this money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at her lawyer when I'm in the courtroom saying, I wish to buy her out. You're suing me for money. Why aren't you accepting it?
Right. What's the answer?
They just changed the subject, and they won't give me a dollar amount. They won't sell anything to me. They're letting this Pierce Leary destroy everything I've worked for. Mm-hmm. And basically my she's got nothing. She's not getting any of the money. She's getting the debt. Mm-hmm. The 2 houses I had in Euclid that went into foreclosure that this Pierce Leary caused isn't just damaging me, it's damaging her. She was on the loans.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think with regards to homes and your properties, as they stand, as Pierce Leary at this moment is either trying to sell, there's 3 remaining. One is in foreclosure, which in Euclid, which won't do much, and the 2 properties in Willoughby. So moving forward, I compare you to the Harrison Ford character in The Fugitive. In a sense, you're looking for redemption, you're trying to prove yourself. And what you keep referring to is Robin Taylor, which we've heard about briefly, who you feel has somehow had a connection with your wife prior to her claiming or alleging you trimmed her hair, which you explicitly say you didn't do. They have no proof other than a picture of a woman who's not your wife that says you trimmed your hair. You've mentioned this. We've talked to several law enforcement people that thought it was laughable that you were brought in for trimming someone's hair that you've been married to, and we've often brought up that I think a lot of people come out of hairdressers with haircuts that are bad. Maybe they can go to jail for domestic violence.
I've had a Geauga officer tell me that hair trimming is not even a legitimate charge. You wouldn't do a night in jail for it.
Right. Well, as you've alluded to me as a person who got to know your storyline, you felt that this Robin Taylor had somehow talked to your wife. The conspiracy theory goes like this: that your wife wanted a divorce. You lived in the same house. She filed for the divorce. You wouldn't leave the house. She somehow figured a way to get you out of that house, and by going to Robin Taylor and coming up with the story that you tried to trim her hair, you were charged with domestic violence. You've often said you've seen your wife crying while they're taking away because you felt that this initially was a way that she might have felt to get you out of the house by claiming a domestic violence that Robin Taylor and her had talked about, okay, and moved forward with. The problem, and what you allude to and tell me, is that you felt that once she made the charge, she couldn't get out of it. As much as she would have liked to probably retract this, by when you looked at her, you felt, even this moment, you felt that she felt bad for what she was doing and putting you through this, but there was no way for her to get out of it, and that Robin Taylor was continually pushing this charge forward. As we know, a lot of these people who are victims advocates feel that they have to become part of this campaign. I think you mentioned that Robin Taylor had 160 some arrests or something like that, or 90 arrests of domestic violence. It was even given an award for her work. So in your opinion, you've stated that maybe particular Robin Morris or Robin Taylor might have been a little too much involved here in moving this charge forward without having the evidence to do so. Is this something that you know, does that sound accurate, what you've told me?
I believe that Robin Morris is using an alias name against me to help my wife with everything that's happening to me. She became Robin Taylor 3 months before my wife filed October 22nd, 2012. She didn't have this alias name before, and I believe that she's only using this alias name in my court cases. And I don't believe the sheriff's department is allowing an officer to use two different names. You know,
Do you feel there's a conspiracy theory maybe with Robin Taylor
I think the sheriff's
and Judge Topeka and the violation of your bonds and things that have been going on? And do you think there's some of this going on that just doesn't add up? Do you feel there's a conspiracy theory?
I don't think it's just Robin Morris. I think the sheriff's department is helping with the illegal things that are happening to me, and they're just using Robin Morris, and they've allowed her to use an alias name against me. And
What did you tell me? Even you mentioned we've been talking about this story for quite a long time. Is you said even during your incarceration in Chardon Municipal Court, you mentioned you were jailed with the kid from Chardon. I mean, what was the name? The kid that committed those horrible acts, and weren't you locked in there for a night eating with this individual? They had mentioned something about the courts out there. What was the kid's name from Chardon Courts?
Tony, I'm sorry to interrupt. You got to wrap this up. I have to leave soon.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so we'll skip that for a second. The reason I bring up Robin Taylor to this segue is on May 27th, 2016, you decide, as I just mentioned with this Harrison Ford idea, you want to prove your innocence, that you weren't part of any of the things that happened, and you go out to an address that you feel that Robin Morris or Harris or Taylor lives at, and you go down the street and you go to the house to see if this person outside, you park your motorcycle and you walk outside to see if this person actually, if there's an address, if this is an existing house or not. And when you do so, what happens as you drive out on this day in May 27, 2016?
I actually went out to Ashtabula because somebody had showed me her Facebook page with two different names on it. And I realized that somebody was using an alias name against me. And when I brought it up to attorneys, everybody wanted to say that she was married.
Who is she?
This Robin Morris, who wants to be Robin Taylor. So I went out, not because of her, I went out to see Mr. Taylor, to find out that Mr. Taylor is actually her boyfriend, Emery.
Charles Emery.
Charles Emery is a state highway patrol officer who basically gave me an OVI for walking down the road. It was in front of his house, but both these officers came out and attacked me.
Let's take one step at a time. You're driving down the street, you park your motorcycle at the end of the street, and you walk up just to view the house. Before you know it, this officer Emery pulls up in his car, in his squad car.
No, I parked down the street and was walking back up the street towards their house, walking past the house when both of them came out and confronted me.
Who are both of them?
Deputy Robin Morris and Charles Emery.
Okay.
And when they asked what I was doing, I told them I was walking down the street, And that at that point, the officer said he didn't believe me, got in his cruiser, went down to my bike, turned his lights on, and proceeded to give me an OVI.
So he arrested you
He arrested me and
for an OVI based upon what?
because he could. And from what I can tell, he did it just to go through my phone.
So he took your phone?
And he took my phone, and him and the officer,
Officer Taylor?
Robin Morris, went through my phone, and Deputy Robin Morris emailed or Facebooked the person that gave me her Facebook.
Okay. So she took the information off your phone, contacted someone that she found on your phone via Facebook and told him what?
She contacted my contact that was telling me who she was,
Did she threaten him?
and basically threatened him, stating for him not to help me.
In what capacity would he be helping you?
By
What she felt.
by showing me the Facebook.
Oh, okay. All right. So Charles Emery then calls for backup, and instead of calling a local, the city that they live in, where the actual OVI is taking place, Emery calls one of his friends from the Asheville State Highway Patrol, also a Sergeant A. Belcher, who appears on the scene. There is dash cam footage of him pulling up, and there's dash cam evidence of then Emery shutting off his mic at that point. The video from Belcher is still taking, you can see what's going on, but you can't hear it.
They talked for 20 minutes before they even brought me out to give me the sobriety test to figure out how they were going to give me an OVI and manipulate me through the situation.
Well, what the tape reflects is you then being talked to by Belcher after, obviously, this Charles Emery he's pretty upset at this point, and you are being questioned. In me speeding up this conversation here, you are put in the back of his vehicle, and his mic is on, Belcher's, and this is where Charles Emery enters the vehicle. You can't really see what he's doing, but we can hear him. As you explain, he gets into the back seat, and he says, and this is on tape, which you'll see, that he says to you, he wants to let you know that Robin Taylor has guns in the house and knows how to use them. He then goes on to say that if you come to this house again, it'll be the last house you ever visit. And as he's finishing that sentence, you hear him stating, no, I don't care. That's because you explain that he's reaching and stroking his gun, and the other officer, Belcher, has to intervene and stop him from moving on you in the back of that vehicle. Is that true?
That's correct. The other officer was pushing Emery out of the way because he was threatening me and stroking his gun, saying he was going to harm me.
Okay. Well, what happens then, because we're speeding this up, is you are then given a test outside in the bright sunlight on rock. I think the surface was unbalanced. They ask you to do the Pee Wee Herman type dance, touch this, do that, and then somehow are convinced that you're given an OVI. All right. You're then taken to.
Were you intoxicated?
No.
You're then taken to where?
I was taken back to the state trooper's office.
Where then your mother then bonded you out?
There was no bond.
They
just wrote me a ticket.
Oh, and you left? Your mom picked you up?
Yeah, and
And they towed your bike?
Yep.
Motorcycle? Okay. They then come out to the house and do what to your bike again?
They put a chain on it for 90 days.
Okay. And then you are then issued a protection order against you by Robin Taylor or Morris. That a letter is written, which we will have a copy of to put on this video, that states that this same Charles Emery makes a statement that his girlfriend, Robin Morris, feared for her life.
No, his girlfriend, Robin Taylor, he doesn't even know who his girlfriend is.
Okay. Robin Morris, whatever. Okay, she issues a statement. He writes a letter to the judge how she feared for her life, yet wanted you to know that she has guns in the house and knows how to use them. So it's a little confusing if she's fearing for her life. Plus, they know you're institutionalized. What comes from there then is you are then picked up, correct, on 6/2. Actually, 6/1, you are picked up.
No, 6/1 I went to bond out on the OVI in Ashtabula.
Okay,
On 6/2,
Lake West.
on
One
6
night.
on 6/2 I picked up my motorcycle from the tow place, brought it back to the house. As soon as I made a phone call to the state troopers to let them know that, they could chain the bike up, within an hour or two, I was surrounded by 3 vehicles and
At your house in Rockingham.
and about 6 officers from Lake County on a probate order to be probated into a mental institute.
You were then probated into was it
Dr. Rodeo from Ravenwood,
right? But the judge here was Mark Bartolotta.
yes.
Okay, so you were probated because there was no facility in Lake or Geauga. You were probated to Summit County, again the same place you were 2 years ago, same institution, correct?
Correct.
Though this time, though, things went much differently for you. You were forced, you were actually, Dr. Rodeo and several people were then within the facility there, were scheduled to have a hearing on 6/9 with your Nate Malik and Dr. Conrad and other magistrates. So what happens is they postpone that, correct? The hearing to see if you could get on it in 6/9, and they made it for the following week, but then again they pushed it back again to the 23rd, which gave them ample time to do all these findings and restraining orders and stalking orders were then put in order against you in Ashtabula by Robin Taylor and
Correct.
and so you had then a stalking order against you, which was interesting because you had never been warned about anything. They also came up with a viable threat statement, came out of somewhere that no one was able to verify that you were threatening people, which is the reason you were even there. No one to this today has been able to substantiate.
No, there are no
that.
charges on me, and the viable threat that even probated me was I threatened a judge,
Well,
which I haven't.
which never occurred. Yet you were put in there. So Attorney Malik, along with Dr. Conrad, went there to try and plead your case. But the problem was that this time around, because you weren't interested in taking medication, you weren't interested in doing those things, because you didn't want to alter your mind, you and 3 other people there, including a prosecutor from Summit County and 3 other doctors, including Dr. Ahmed, said they didn't want you released, and so then you weren't. And during this period of time, you were a model patient. You ended up taking your meds because you weren't allowed to walk outside, you weren't allowed to do recreational things. So you decided to give in to take the meds, which is hard for you to do because you had no privileges. So then you spent the next diagnosed with a delusional order for the next period of time until 8/22/16, and you were released into the care of your mother. And at that point, we're going to being seen by Beacon Health and Mentor, Kim Sanders, who actually had given you some medication, which you continue with. You are now facing an OVI charge still, which has been set for. What was that set for? The OVI. I think your Malik is.
The next pretrial is December 13th.
Okay, you get a motion to try to dismiss the OVI charges. Also, again, we have you trying to now build your case that from the beginning here that you have been unjustly imprisoned, unjustly accused, unjustly convicted, all starting with the hair trimming, and to this point, now most recently filing correspondence to the Supreme Court on the behalf of disciplinary action against Judge Stopeka and also looking at this moment in Geauga Court, asking for Judge Burt to hear, to ask for justification of what Pierce Leary has done to this moment in time, as well as what, to put a stay in that he will not be able to sell these properties until someone hears your case. In closing, you've also petitioned the court in Lake County. Your mother has to be your legal guardian, and that is currently being heard, should be heard and under consideration by Judge Mark Bartolotta. Is this correct?
That's correct.
Anything else you want to add to this, what
No.
we've been going over? Thank you.